Yep.
All right, everybody, get the music down. There we go. Perfect. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. It's May 10th. Welcome to Broomfield Matters. We're still kind of in the zone of getting ready for the annual town meeting.
Yep.
If anybody hadn't noticed, it's the flea market first. It's the May flea market event happening as we speak. Just try driving down 20, you'll know. It's a little bit trafficy. It's been kind of crazy, but no, they had great weather, so
Yeah, it should be a good turnout.
good for business.
Yeah.
All right.
And Paul doesn't like to do this, but this is Paul McCarthy.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm Mike Doyle.
Yep. Welcome. In case you didn't know who we were,
That's right.
I think by now, I mean, we should be
We have new viewers every week.
every week. We got new
we're
viewers.
growing.
Almost sponsorship. Not quite. Not quite. All right. Beyonce would be jealous.
That's right. She got nothing on
She
us.
got nothing. All right. So, should we start with the meeting of last week?
Yeah.
I want to start with the caucus. Yeah, we can start with the caucus maybe.
Okay.
Because that kind
Oh
of
yeah, because that I guess
that led up
in
to
progression.
yeah, just in a timely fashion. So, all right. So, just a quick review of what a caucus is. A caucus is basically when there are openings in town government. They have a caucus, and the caucus will bring everybody. It's basically a non-denominational, nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan.
And so everybody gets there, and if you nominate somebody or you want to be nominated, you can get nominated a second time. Once you're seconded, then you're on. If there are more than two people for one position, then they have a runoff, and that runoff is actually done at the caucus, which is interesting because historically, I think the caucuses that we've probably been to for the last 10 years, whatever, 10, maybe 20 people, maybe 25, something like that. This caucus is well attended, so that was good.
As it was last year.
As it was last year, with more than 75, 80 participants, which is great. But what's interesting, let me see, I don't think we need to talk about every seat that was nominated, because there are a lot of seats that there are a couple of
the funds, the Harding Fund.
The Harding Fund, right,
Yeah.
the Lincoln. So there are a few things that are always up, but the interesting ones, I think, from our discussion, probably the ones in the day-to-day town government, moderator, select board. Those are probably the two biggest ones that were open this year, and there was one position open for the select board, and the moderator is just one position, of course. So,
Right.
what do you want? Anything to say?
So, yeah, well, it's always been kind of a question of why are there so many people here? In my head, the past 2 years, it has been packed, and it hasn't historically been that way, and it was always something that was just kind of curious to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was and I know. I mean, it's good to get participation of people that can get in there and voice their opinion. I think that is part of the process, but I think the reason it was packed we'll probably get to in a minute.
Yeah. So last year I had suspected it was kind of nefarious.
Ooh,
I like that.
nefarious. I
Yeah.
like it. Not good, but
No, I think there were phone calls made, and there was a very packed area to make sure that certain candidates would have the votes.
yeah.
And it was interesting because I don't think they fully understood last year
No.
what the deal was, and that was when Paul and I were nominated.
Yeah.
And they didn't fully understand.
No, because they could have had a runoff.
Oh yeah.
And made it a lot easier.
Yep.
But they did. They read. They learned.
And they came back this
right.
year.
And so there was certainly an activation. There was a robocall or some sort of
there is
the
a
word
tree
got out. There's absolutely an
somehow.
information tree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Which is good. I mean, personally, I think it is. It's not good for democracy.
No.
It's not good for our town. It's, fair is fair, and if people are interested, they'll come out and vote.
Right. And I even talked to the town clerk just about the nuances and the history of the caucus and the value in this day and age. And I think there's an agreement that it's kind of lost its luster, to say the least. And maybe we should just explain why or how that can happen. And so, should I go?
Yes.
Okay. So the caucus, I guess, is not necessarily under the same. Is it under the same rules as campaigning, like at an election?
That's something I don't know.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure, and I can't remember. I think I even asked. I'm not sure if I remember
Yeah.
the answer from the town clerk. Maybe she can chime in whether or not you have to be. You can't. So at a town election, I think it's 150 feet. Is it 150?
Yeah,
150 feet. You can't campaign. You can't solicit. You can't have brochures or paraphernalia. You can be outside. That's why everybody, when they have signs, are 150 feet away from the voting place. And so that's the rule. And so you're not supposed to have paraphernalia that would, even stickers or little post-it notes or
T-shirts.
cards.
You're not supposed to wear T-shirts
Right.
in to vote.
Political T-shirts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yep.
You can wear T-shirts.
You gotta wear a T-shirt.
Yeah.
But you don't have to wear a tie. But this is interesting because this was I'm just gonna put it up. There was an interesting piece of paper that was up there that had just a couple of names on it and very, very, I don't know, somewhat bland little piece of paper that just had some names on it. And so it was interesting that it was even there, but in case people forgot the 3 names that they needed to remember, I guess it would help, those people, especially those people that might be there that have no idea who they are, but they're there just because they were asked to be there so that they could support a certain
candidate.
certain candidate. And so, but this is the problem that I have, and so maybe I'll. So as far as a selectman candidate, I don't really care. I mean, to me, you get in there, you nominate somebody seconds it, that person ought to have a right on there, a right to be on there. I'm not exactly sure. It's interesting that Mr. Fraser actually was nominated and then declined during and he was also the moderator of the caucus, but he declined even being selected. So I thought that was interesting that his name was on there, but clearly it was indented a little bit, so it was like.
Oh yeah, there's a highlight and an indent, and it was certainly the primary candidate, and then
Let's see if I can get it to roll.
My belief is that that was for specific people, and certain people would trigger this second.
Yeah.
Which I think that those certain people might include yourself and myself, and if we were nominated and seconded, then they would have enacted the Mitch Fraser vote.
I see. Yeah, they did nominate him, which was interesting. But and then the other one, obviously the other candidate was Mr. Bob Vandal. And so Mr. Vandal, who's been a select board member in the past, and who comes from a history of, I think his dad was a select board member. Not in Brimfield.
On fire department.
Not in Brimfield, though, was he?
No, he was
in
Southbridge.
Southbridge, yeah, that's what I thought. And so, Mr. Vandal is on the fire department, and he's
on ZBA.
Yep, and he's on the ZBA.
Very active in municipal.
Yeah.
Has been for a long time.
So it was good. I was pleasantly surprised to hear that he was putting his name in. Anyhow, that's that. But this is the one that I wanted to kind of focus on a little bit, because this also has a highlighted name and then an alternate or whatnot. So Mr. Fraser got the nomination again. That was fine. Mr. Miller wasn't present but requested to be nominated and got a second at the time, and then got enough to be considered on the ballot. And once that happened, there was a nomination for Mr. Moore to be, and he got seconded, obviously. And so now, this is where it became a little bit interesting, because now you've got 3 for one position, and the rules of the caucus are you need to have 2 for one position. So
Right.
they needed to have a runoff.
Right. At the caucus, if there's more than 2 people going for a single position, you need to have a runoff.
Right. And that runoff is usually, if you've been to town meeting, it's very similar. There's a vote, and you raise your hand, and there's a quick count usually, because the number's not gargantuan as far as the number of people that are there. And so they take a quick count. And they did. They took a quick count between Mr. Fraser, Mr. Moore, and Mr. Miller. And the 2 that got the highest number of votes in that building.
Assumedly, I didn't. So one of the things that also happens at town meeting and by the town moderator is that after the vote,
At
you
the
give.
caucus.
Well,
Oh yeah, both.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's a vote that's contested, even at the select board minutes, you'll see that it's 3-2. 3 and 4 or 3 for the thing, 2 against.
Yeah.
There should have been a firm number that said Mr. Fraser got X votes.
Right.
Mr. Moore got Y votes. Mr.
Right.
Miller got Z votes.
Right.
There wasn't any of that.
Right.
Which makes me wonder how Mitch Fraser, who was the moderator at the caucus, will be as moderator at town hall at
Right.
town meetings.
Exactly. Well, the other major question I had is I watched it a couple times, and I didn't hear any instructions to the people that were there.
Correct.
You shouldn't be able to vote for all 3. When they say, who wants this name, you should put your hand up. Who wants this name, you should put your hand up. This name, put your hand up. I don't think you're supposed to vote for all 3 or 2 or.
So
Do you know?
what I heard was that you can, because it's not an actual vote. It's just who would you like to see on the ballot.
Yeah, but
you
it is
could
a vote. It's a vote.
It's a runoff.
It's a vote to get to 2 top vote getters get on.
Right.
So it is a vote.
It is a vote.
To me, I don't think, and I don't know. I guess I should have found that out before. Like, should you be able to, like, in my book,
You did ask that question, and I think that's what the answer was.
that it wasn't an official vote. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah,
remember.
or you can vote twice because you can put 2 candidates on the ballot.
Yeah. So to me, this should work like 3rd grade, right? You want to vote for someone to be the person who gives out the candy at lunchtime. So everybody votes 1. You put somebody's name on it. You put it in a hat, and
Yeah.
the top 2 vote getters get the runoff.
So does the town moderator bring candy to
I
the
don't-
town meeting?
No, the lawyer used to.
That's,
Remember? So
yeah.
we did have some. But
that
so,
wasn't for
so that's
everybody.
the way I no. So the way I looked at it, the way I think it ought to have run, would be just like that. You put everybody
Yeah.
votes for 1 name, you put it in a hat, they count, and then the 2 top vote getters, because you shouldn't be able to vote for 2.
Right.
In my opinion, this is very simple, people. In my opinion, that I think that you put all your votes in a hat, and the 2 top people get it. End of story. That's more representative of the room
Yeah.
than not. And so what ended up happening, nevertheless, is that Mr. Fraser and Mr. Moore got the top votes by hand count. They were declared to have had the top votes by hand count
At
there.
the end, but during it,
Well, yeah,
there were questions all around.
there was a misspeak, I guess maybe one would say. I think Mr. Fraser had mentioned Mike instead of Mr. Moore, and so that it was confusion. But then I did talk to the town clerk, and she did clarify that that was just a mistake when that utterance of that name, and that the 2 top getters were Mr. Fraser and Mr. Moore. That's fine.
Yep.
So the next step is to sign the documents with the town clerk, and the town clerk was right there.
Right.
So the easiest thing to do would be to walk the 8 feet and sign the papers with the town clerk, and then everything is all set, right? Didn't happen.
that we know of.
I don't think Mr. Moore didn't sign his papers.
He could have rescinded his signature. Maybe. I don't know. Something happened.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have withdrawn. So maybe you put the name in and then withdrew. I don't know.
So May 2nd was a critical date. That was when everything had to be finalized.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe after May 1st, you could withdraw. So at some point, either he never signed or he withdrew his signature.
Okay. All right, I get it. So what happened was then is we get this right here is the ballot. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger because I can.
So this is the final ballot for the upcoming election.
Oh, yeah. There it is right here. Sorry. And so if you notice, what happened was, in my opinion, if Mr. Moore rescinded his vote or didn't sign on that particular day, then Mr. Frazier would have gone unopposed. Right? Is that it's an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay. And so, but I don't, and the assumption at the time, on that date, the assumption was you couldn't pull papers.
Right.
Because I asked, you could not pull papers to nominate a citizen's nomination and get on the ballot because the timing wasn't consistent and it wouldn't allow that to happen.
So Mr. Miller is saying that he was told that he did sign. So you are correct.
Who did sign?
Mr. Moore.
He did. Okay, so he did go over and sign.
He did sign it, and then he withdrew.
And then he withdrew. So, but I think everybody in that building, from the town clerk and everybody, everybody thought that was it. You couldn't pull papers to run. And that ended up not being quite correct. And it was due to timing and exactly how many days before the election and the caucus. And so that's what it was originally. That's how it was explained to me.
Right.
That it wasn't possible to pull papers after the caucus.
And it does take an advanced degree in, I think, calculus to figure out these dates and work on, the caucus date, the town meeting date, the election date,
and everything backwards.
In between, and it goes backwards.
Yeah, it goes backwards. So you have the election date, and then you go back from the election date to when the caucus can happen, and then it does get, which again goes back to maybe this caucus thing is just unnecessary, archaic. But what ended up happening is that I believe everybody expected Mr. Frazier to be unopposed for the moderator position. And then Mr. Miller followed up with the Attorney General's office and Secretary of State.
And they agreed with Mr. Miller and with you that, and I mean most people I think thought that you could pull papers, and there were discussions with the town clerk and Mr. Miller and the Attorney General, and at the end of the day, Mr. Miller was able to pull papers.
Right.
He got the votes required, or the signatures required to be put on, and he is now on the ballot.
Right.
And
now, what's interesting on the ballot part of things, because I thought this was somewhat interesting. You see the way it's written, caucus nominee and candidate for re-election with nomination papers. Have they always done that? Like where you,
I don't know.
The more you look at things, the more you start saying, I don't know. Maybe it's always been that way, that it's always been explained where they came from, where the name came from. But I don't remember that. I do usually remember a little I for incumbent, or whatever. And I don't know if we ever use that in town, because now I'm looking at this much more critically than I ever would have, to be honest, any other year. And there's no, there's nothing that says incumbent or
Or candidate for re-election.
Candidate for re-election. It doesn't say that. Which
Well, yeah, it does.
For which one?
Mike Miller, candidate for re-election.
Oh, candidate for
with no
re-election.
nomination
Oh, okay. All right. So it has that. All right. Oh yeah. Okay. And caucus nominee and nomination papers. Yeah. So I guess that part of it for re-election, and then the nomination papers and the caucus nominee. I guess maybe that's always been there, and I just never knew. That's an interesting one.
It is.
So to get back to, I think, the points that we were talking about.
But actually, can we go back to the screen for just one thing?
Oh, yes, we can. We
Yeah.
have the technology.
All right. I just want to point out right here, and this is a point to drink,
Oh,
is look at that select board. Paul and Mike Cordy, I'm not familiar with Mr. Cordy,
yeah.
but the name that isn't on there
Right.
is the incumbent, the would-be incumbent, Ms. Miller, not Miller,
Collins.
Collins is not running.
That was interesting. I thought that was an interesting turn of events, I guess, to say. So, yeah, for personal reasons, whatever reason, she's not running.
Yeah.
Which I think is...
Hopefully for the betterment of the town reason.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out and then how it gets reorganized. And then, yeah, maybe I'll just let it go at that for now because I got some other things that we'll bring up at another point, but it'll all depend on that. So, all right. So those are probably the biggest as far as the contention of the caucus. Like I think personally, I think the caucus was used. I mean, I think abused, if probably to say a better word. I think the system, and I'm not saying anything was illegal at all. I'm not saying anything was illegal at all.
Correct.
But what I am saying is things weren't done in the way the system was designed to have them done.
It's unfortunate that
manipulation.
The town is being manipulated on virtually everything.
Yeah.
There's some sort of communication tree. There's some sort of papers that go back and forth that shouldn't.
Right.
And it's just not the democratic process that.
Right. It's manipulative.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. And I think it was I think the caucus didn't go as well as it should have. I think there were glitches, even though they were relatively considered to be minor. I think they were more than minor. I think things needed to be much more clear and much more definitive. And it just kind of went too fast, I think, for people to be comfortable with it. But it was manipulated. There's no doubt in my mind, just as the town meeting was manipulated last year by motivating...
In many years.
It's always been... All right, let me take that back. It's always been somewhat manipulated, right?
Yeah.
Because people look to see what the articles are, and then they come, if they're early in the thing, they would come, and it's amazing how it empties out after 9:30.
Oh, yeah.
When certain things are done.
After certain items, yeah.
And so that's always been there, if it's something for the school, they get, parents and families. It just always has been that. And I get it. I get that. And right now, the motivation is at the hand of the board,
right.
Basically.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying about last year, I do think that was, in particular, a bad year. The town has always had the same first, 7 articles, and those have always been the exact same.
Right.
And then last year. The articles that pertain to the interests of the majority of the board were put up first.
Right.
And when, 2 members of the select board brought it up, I believe the administrative assistant brought it up, FinCom brought it up, town council brought it up.
Right.
And it was always poo-pooed.
Right. Yeah. Right. It should be, it ought to be the business, it's a business meeting. It's a town business meeting. And it should have been, the most important things are the financials at the beginning, and they absolutely manipulated the agenda so that the people could vote, and then if they didn't really give a rat's behind about the rest of it, they could skedaddle. Right. And I don't know if they did or not, but they could have. They certainly did that to get everybody at the beginning. There's no doubt. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
to have done that, to manipulate that agenda that way.
Yep.
I didn't even look at the town warrant in that light. Is it back?
It's back to normal.
Yeah, back to normal. So again, whatever. I mean, so all of a sudden, what, they had a come to Jesus meeting and enlightenment that said, "Oh, we'll put it back to normal," or they just
There are no citizen petitions that, you know,
that warranted
Were-
their
yeah.
So they again, the select board shouldn't manipulate an agenda of a town meeting because of the material that's in the town meeting.
right.
All right, they
End
just
of
shouldn't.
story.
It's wrong. End of story.
Yeah, and it's unwritten rules, you
Right.
know, like how to do the caucus. Like, you know, you've never had to have a runoff where you're voting for two different people at the same time or anything else.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's really unfortunate that this town is sinking to that
Right.
to that level.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's been a trend to do it their way, and okay, it may not be illegal, but if enough people question it, maybe you should question it yourself, and maybe you should do the right thing, even if it's not exactly what you want.
Right.
And it goes for participation. It goes for the way things are discussed or not discussed in meeting. I mean, these budgetary meetings that were never held.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And if they say, "Oh well, we talked about it at FinCom," that's not where you vote to spend my money.
Right.
FinCom gives advice. FinCom gives representation of like from their aspect, from their perspective. But the reality is, select board spends your money, and if the select board spends your money, and they don't say where the money's being spent or how much in an open meeting, that's not right. It's not right.
Right. Yeah, and there was never a quorum of the select board at a FinCom meeting, so they couldn't even discuss it at the FinCom meeting.
Right.
You know, and FinCom's role is to make sure that an item fits the budget.
Right.
You know, we've been very lucky because they have been arbiters of what the town should and shouldn't do.
Right.
And they've been another ear to use for this, you know, along with the select board.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there. You know, they should only be looking at what can fit into the budget.
Right.
And that's the yes or no. And if it's a yes, they can do it, and then town meeting, you know, will vote
If they really can do it.
whether if you want
Yeah. If the town
if we
people
want you
do
to
it.
spend our money.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just because they go to a FinCom meeting, like you said, it's not they can't be representing the board because the stuff that they brought up at the FinCom meeting was never discussed in an open meeting at the board.
Right.
At least,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say none of it was discussed, but a lot of it was not discussed beforehand. The only people that seemed to know what they were bringing to FinCom were the people, the administrative assistant and the vice chair. Not even
Right.
the chair. The vice chair was the one represented, and they acted like, you know, this is what we decided. This is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And they never most of the stuff wasn't discussed in an open meeting.
Right. As you saw at the last meeting, this would be a good place to put it.
Right.
But before we do that, hold that thought.
Okay.
I just want to get
Okay.
out that Mr. Miller had spoken to, as we said, the Attorney General's office and the Ethics Commission. Both told him that a candidate running the caucus was not illegal, but it's very unethical.
Oh.
So if
I thought you were going to say unusual, or not necessarily
the word
suggested.
written is unethical.
Well,
So
does that matter?
we've brought
Does that really matter?
yeah.
I mean, yeah. Anyway.
It's interesting. So
Yeah, that
so now
was-
going back to the segue.
Okay.
You know, Paul was saying that it appeared that the some of the budget items that were presented by Ms. Collins and Ms. Kofsky at FinCom weren't discussed in a public meeting.
Right.
You can see that if you watch any of the meetings, you'll see that there are a lot of warrant articles and line items that are under the purview of the select board that were never discussed in any public meeting.
Right.
But the best example of seeing that would be at the last meeting when they did go over the full budget. Select person Soto asked a bunch of questions that
Bunch.
you know were basically, why is this happening? What caused this? everything else, which I took to believe that he had never seen these things. You know,
Right.
and they did go over the select board budget once at a meeting, and it was, you know, just thrown at them, and I believe Mr. Soto even protested on that, saying we didn't really have time to look at it beforehand,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly. Do you remember that?
I don't. I do remember. I think he did say something to that effect, like, "When did we get these?" or "I haven't had
Yeah.
a chance," or something like that.
And
There's
they
a
would've-
lot. There's a lot to go through, and that's why historically, most of the time, the board does it in chunks. You
Right.
know, police chief comes in front, says, "This is what I want. These is why I want it." You say, "Okay, well, why?" All right, that's good. Or make some changes, or, you know, try
Yeah.
to get more facts and then come back. Or I mean, every department that needed a little bit more, that was under the auspices of oversight by the board, came in front and said, "This is what I need."
Yeah,
You know?
and the way that we kind of had it run, which has been what we were given as well from previous boards, was that if you were going, so FinCom back in November, October timeframe sends out all the emails with everybody's targeted budgets,
Right.
and they basically look at it and say, you know, the what am I trying to think of? The interest rates
Oh, the cost of living.
Yeah, cost of living
COLA. Yeah.
is, you know, went up 5%. So all salary line items are up 5%, and historically it's always been level fund all of the
Yeah.
expense accounts.
Right.
And for the most part, most boards, committees, departments will try hard to level fund.
Yeah.
And, you know, as long as you do that, then you don't really have to come in front of the select board, because it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's what's suggested, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
And if there's something weird, like, you know, you funded this and nothing was used last year, they're
Yeah.
going to ask you about it. If they said, "Okay, you funded it this way, you used all of it, you know, maybe we'll do a little bit more than COLA," you know what I mean? Just to kind of make it make sense. But otherwise, if it looked like it was right on the money, they just said, "Okay, it's right on the money. We'll go with a 5% or whatever the year percentage is," and they kind of just basically streamline it, just get it right through. And that happens a lot in a stable government.
Yep. Yeah. So then, and the select board would just see those things. You know, one year the fire department needed air
Right, the oxygen tanks.
oxygen
yep.
tanks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Air tanks, I shouldn't. Yeah, not oxygen.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, they needed something, and that wasn't in the expense account before, and the price went up dramatically. So they came in front and said, we need a 10% increase in our expense account
Right.
because of this. You know, again, easy to understand.
Right.
Chief was in and out in 5 minutes with the
Right.
select board. He went in front of the FinCom,
Mm-hmm.
said the same thing. No holds during town meeting, and they got him.
Right. Yeah, where it becomes a little bit dicey is when your line item is going to be either running in a deficit towards the end, or extremely different than what it was the year prior, for whatever reason you want to put forward. And then you get some explaining to do to try to justify it so that they can support it. Now again, it goes to town meeting, which I think is why it's so important for the town to show up if you want to spend your money wisely.
We're not advocating you show up just because you should be in opposition, but if you care about the community,
You should question things.
you should
right?
question.
Right,
This is your time to question.
right, exactly right.
We're not going to push you to go and tell you how to vote.
Oh, of course not. No. It's one of those things where you just need explanation, and
Yeah.
I think you need to get justification on
And-
a lot of things.
And I will say that this year,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to be raising my hand quite a bit, because there's a lot of explaining that needs to be done that hasn't been done in open sessions.
What usually happens at town meeting is that people will look through, and the way it's a very busy Excel sheet, all right, and it will have like this year, last year, and the proposed I'm not sure what order it was, but and the proposal for this upcoming year,
Yeah.
and then the percent increase, and what
So-
reflect. Go ahead.
So there's actually the previous year, the target, and the requested.
Okay.
So is what was done previously, what was approved by town meeting last year.
Right.
Then there's the finance committee's targeted line item, which would be what they felt based on past trends
Oh, okay.
the department should be requesting.
Okay.
And then there's the
And then the
requested,
requested amount.
and it's the target to request that goes into the percent that you see.
Okay. And so what you'll find is that a lot of people, what's generally done is the moderator will do it in chunks. So it's like, all right, these are all related kind of discussions, 1 to 18. And then what usually happens is somebody sees an increase of 25% or 30%, they'll immediately yell, hold on 17, hold on 14, or whatever. And then the moderator kind of checks that off, and then they do the individual holds to try to explain what those numbers. And sometimes it's a matter of things change. You know what I mean? The cost of things just go up, and then it's like, okay, it explains it. But most people will reflexively look at the increase, and just say hold, which is not a bad thing to do, to get some explanation.
Right, and it is kind of funny to see what gets held.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, you'll see a 75% increase or a 100% increase. And, you know, there was one year that this happened with the rec commission. And they had been using $250 a year for 20 years. So they wanted to go up to $500. So it was a $250 increase, which was a 100% increase.
Right.
You know, and someone said, oh, hold. And it was basically, they need, 12 shirts instead of 10.
Right.
So,
meanwhile, the school budget goes from $6 million to 6.75.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, okay, just do it.
that's only 7%. That's okay.
Yeah.
But
it's funny.
100% on.
See, it catches your eye, and that's what and that's what that column is there for. And that's one.
Yeah.
That's a cheat. That's an easy way to kind of look for things that might be glaring. The other things that are harder to find are the changes that are more subtle. Names, hours, that kind of stuff, and that's a little bit harder to read. So if you're not privy to it, I think you just have to go to the meeting and listen, and kind of see where the discussions go.
Yep.
So I guess we could talk a little bit. I thought that the select board meeting that talked about all of this, I thought it was interesting that they tried to do this all in one meeting without chunking it out like most people would. But they did make some revisions, like the $50,000 for the building committee. I think that's going to be eliminated because there's already money that's been in that account.
Yeah, I also think this should have been something that they wanted to put the final stamp on the budget. Which again is, to me, finance committee has the final say of, yes, it fits, or no, it doesn't.
Right.
And they're not supposed to be making any real decisions. So the select board was supposed to do that before finance. So the way it's set up this year was that
vetted officer
FinCom had to say yes, it fits, no, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Only to have, after they spent a couple sessions, I don't know how long, talking about the building committee, and giving them another $50,000, and they said, yeah, that this fits. Well, if selectmen had done their job when they were supposed to do their job,
it should have come out.
It would have come out before FinCom spun their wheels on it.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely the opposite. FinCom had to do a lot more work. I mean, they do enough work, but they had to do a lot more work this year.
Yep.
Because there's just a lot more going on.
As Teresa has had to do, and Teresa's assistant has had to do, and everybody in town has had to do more work because this board doesn't want to do any.
So I thought it was also interesting. Let's see, I've got a couple notes that I had there. So uh, yeah, like they were even talking about the fire department line items. I mean, again, these all should have been,
Yeah.
you know, when the warrant's already written and out to press.
It's the wrong
It's
time.
like long. Yeah, this should have been long ago. But then they had to explain, you know, what the extra UTV is, and then of course, you know, Mr. Soto was talking about, well, we can get that from state police or the sheriff, and it's like, it's not the same when you need it. Like if you're a kid up in the freaking mountain, you want your fire department to have a vehicle to be able to get to it. End of story. This is just what you need. It's like giving somebody a laptop to do their work.
Right.
I mean, you kind of need it.
Well, unless you can't find the laptop.
Unless you do well, exactly right. Yeah. So then there's the administrative assistant money was interesting, and that did spark some conversation. And I have to say, Mr. Soto was questioning a lot of things that were legitimately being questioned.
I just wish he could have done that at a time that could have made a difference.
Right. And I guess if everybody has a chance to look at that, I thought it was extremely unprofessional the way they dealt with them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They were very dismissive. They would laugh, smirk, joke, you know, whisper. I thought that was very dismissive. I thought it was very unprofessional from a leadership role on the CEO basically of our town. As a collective, they need to be professional, and they're spending our money, your money. If you're from Brimfield, your money, and you shouldn't be so cavalier about it. If you can't explain it to the fifth member and he doesn't know about, and he can't explain it back to me, how's he going to explain to me when I ask him in the street what's going on?
Right.
And he goes, I don't know when this happened. I don't know when the police made this change or when the administrative assistant numbers changed. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Or the treasury, all that. I mean, to me, it was extremely the opposite of the transparency that these people said that they were trying to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Through the town vote, they're going to set up. There was something about. I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, but.
Last year, for the past 2 years, on town meeting floor, there has been $10,000 raises requested.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
And I think Mr. Soto went a little bit too far with that, and talking about the guy who came up and
I think that was
Mr. Corey.
Yeah, but I think it was. Oh yeah, and then Ms. Collins. Yeah,
and
yeah, that's.
However it happened,
we won't get into that. It happened, and the town voted on it. The town that was represented there voted on it, and it is what it is. But I thought that they did clarify that's what happened, whatever. But again, they were so dismissive and so petty. Like the chair was just kind of talking about, what do you think the town floor should have done? I mean, he just gets tries to get under his skin. I think honestly is what it just seemed to be
unprofessional.
Wrong. It was, yeah. But anyways, so I'm not going to go there either. I don't think. Town making a decision. We're going to stick with that. Administrative assistant, the hours are going up or whatever. I mean, so I think Mr. Soto was asking, the assistant to the assistant. There was just there's no clarification. If the people on the board of selectmen, whether they're in agreement or not in agreement, it doesn't matter. If something came up for clarification, explanation, and had a vote, and it was voted on, then he wouldn't be asking these questions.
Right.
And he didn't really get answers.
Right.
He didn't get good answers anyways.
Yeah.
But
and that assistant to the assistant, whatever that was, the original request, I believe, from the FinCom meeting went from 12 to 20. And then it was
hours.
Right. 12 to 20 hours. And then the game time adjustment was made by Ms. Collins, I believe, without even Ms. Kofsky knowing, and said, I think it should be 24. It's written as 20, but I think it should go to 24.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, and that was acceptable.
Yeah, it's like, what is going on? I don't know. It was interesting when they were saying, well, what's the, I think it was Mr. Soto was asking, well, what's the role of the assistant to the assistant? I don't really understand it. And the assistant to the assistant who was taking the minutes was explaining it, which I thought was like, wait a minute, she shouldn't be explaining the job that they're trying to. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't get it. If the chair and the vice chair can't convince the members of the board about what they were trying to vote on, and they don't have clarification, then certainly asking her to do it was wrong. I mean, it was probably better explained, but it wasn't the right way to do it. So that was funny.
Mr. Miller is saying that as moderator, he's going to be stating at the town meeting that he made a major mistake in allowing the $10,000 raise. It was way above the scope of the article. I had spoken with Mr. Miller, and there was something.
What is that? What is the scope of the article?
So I believe, and Mr. Miller could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way it works is that whatever goes on the town warrant, you can talk that number down, but you can't go up. So if that's what the boards have all decided, ideally the select board, the FinCom,
right,
and the board requesting the money has requested $50,000. You can't on the floor change it to say 60.
I see.
Because you like the person.
But if you want to bring it down, isn't there something about the higher number has to be voted down first, or is it just as amended? I mean, there's something about the higher number, but I don't know when that falls into.
Yeah, if that was a bond rating or a bond.
Yeah, maybe it was more of the FinCom at the beginning type of questions. Yeah. We'll have to get. Luckily, we have a couple more shows before.
That's right.
Yeah, because we need to explain these things.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Vice Chair, I have any questions? Nope. I've gone over there and have no questions. So there's no questions on the budget, which is great, I think. Let's see. They're talking about the landfill mowing. I remember this coming up before because I think they contract that out. I'm sorry, and the reason is because the angle of the land.
They would need a much more specialized.
Right. It's not you just don't put a mower on it. It's a little bit more involved than that. If anybody's seen it, it's not just get a mower and get some kid to $15 to mow your lawn.
They could rent goats. Just saying. I don't know if anyone knows anyone with goats, but
yeah, you could rent goats. All right.
I think in that area it might be coyotes too. So.
Well, then you can put a burro in there with them or something like that. That'd be all right. An alpaca. A burro.
Around here we call them donkeys.
Oh, God. All right. Asking about how many full-time employees there are. Full-time benefited employees are over 20 hours. It's interesting that they are throwing a few more 20-hour week people. And so the ramifications of a 20-hour per week benefited person is different than a 19-hour a week non-benefit person. It costs a lot more. It's usually 24 to 28% more. I don't know what it is municipality-wise, but the benefits that you get, and benefits mean sick time, holiday time, vacation time, insurance, coming up, and other things like that. So pension,
retirement.
Yeah, retirement. Yeah. So that's all part of it, and people really need to understand the difference between a 20-hour a week and less than 20-hour a week has long-term ramifications for the budgetary standpoint.
Especially now that I don't know if we'll get to talking about it later, is the 60-40 split where right now Brimfield has a 50-50 split for insurance, which absolutely stinks.
Yeah.
And a lot of these lower paid full-time 20 or more hour positions get half of their paycheck or more cut off by their insurance. Mm-hmm. So we're going to move it up to 60%, which doesn't help a whole lot, but
it's more than 50.
It's more than 50.
Yep.
And which is the right thing to do. I do agree with the select board on this. But one of the things that you'll see in the budget is a line item called OPEB.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we talked about this last time, and I still don't remember what OPEB stands for. But now that we're going to 60-40 instead of 50-50, that has ramifications because if you are, tenured, if you've been here for 10 years or more, you will get benefits, for the rest of your life.
Right.
And we're responsible for that. The town is responsible. So we were responsible at a 50-50 split. Now it's 60-40, compounded by the rest of your life.
Right.
So, or at least up until Medicare.
Yeah, it adds up. It adds up.
It
adds up to money. And that's something that you have to be aware of, and you need to, and I'm not saying there aren't positions that need to be that number of hours, but if you do that, it shouldn't be just, let's just do that. You have to understand the business side of things,
right?
Which I'm not exactly sure that's been proven, to be honest. And for Mr. Soto, the fact that he said, I understand how 20 hours a week is only is full-time is considered a benefits, and why is it not part-time? Well, because that's
state law.
The way it is. It's municipalities, right? I think it's a municipality law.
No, it is actually MGL.
I don't think it is.
No?
I think it might be municipality.
Okay.
We can check that out though to get clarification of that, because I don't think 20 hours a week warrants full benefits across the state, like in every position. I don't think, because you can still have part-time positions that are part-time, that are 15 hours a week or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just remember the reason why I'm pretty sure it's some sort of state. Yeah, because in one of the interviews we did with the treasurer collector, he had mentioned, I believe he.
You mean the candidate for treasurer collector, right?
Yeah.
At the time.
We asked, looking at the resume, it didn't appear that he had the years for the qualifications.
Right.
And his response, which struck with me, as you can tell, I don't remember my own name
I was
morning,
like, that's impressive.
But his response was that he does meet the qualifications because a full-time employee is considered 20 hours a week.
All right.
So,
but again, that's in a municipality.
Right.
So
I
you know what I mean? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I guess he could have been.
I gotta find that out. So we got some homework to do. I should make some notes, but it's all up here.
Yeah.
We'll have the same
we'll have the problems.
We'll have the same questions next time, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
The only thing that I don't really have anything else from that meeting. I don't think that's glaring. The only thing that I would say from that meeting is, again, all the select board members ought to have their computers, and they should have everything on a computer, and they should give the computers back at the end of a meeting. If they, that way they can keep track of everything, and everybody's got the same notes. I think that would be, so that there isn't, I didn't get that. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't think that, I think that's a problem. They need to use the mics.
Yes.
I would say when
everyone except Mr. Kelly, he needs to use his less.
Less, yeah. He's kind of breathing on it. So you just have to kind of be aware when you're not using it. Just kind of maybe do that a little bit, because it gets a little bit loud.
Creepy.
But the people that are giving them information, whether it's Chief Beaudry or whether it's Accountant Marie or Teresa, sometimes the microphone's not on. You can't hear them. And it makes it very, very hard.
Yes.
To know exactly what was going on. You have to kind of repeat, and you still can't always hear it. So, not that they take advice from us on the show, but those are the things that I would change. I would please, if anybody goes to these meetings and has something to say, go up to the microphone, because nobody can hear what you're saying when they're at home watching. So.
Right.
All right. What else we got? I think that was it on that.
Yeah. So so now my segue. I'm all about the segues tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna write a couple things while you're doing that.
Oh, look at you.
No, so I don't forget.
So one of the last things that triggered in my head was that Anthony Soto congratulated the police chief for cutting down his salary, and he thought that was great, that and good for the taxpayers that
Gotcha.
he did that. So I was very concerned about that because of what's been going on with the treasurer collector, and now
Yes.
because that whole salary got all screwed up. Now we're at a point where we're paying somebody $180 an hour because we don't have the budget to pay someone a salary anymore because that got taken away. And
To clarify, nobody in town's getting 180. It's the external consultant that has to come in and put the fires out.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, just
yes,
there's nobody making 180 in our
Right.
town. But our town is paying 180 an hour,
right.
so it's a good gig.
So I had written an email to finance committee expressing my angst about shrinking the police chief's salary line item,
Okay.
even though it fits our chief, and I hope this chief sticks around.
Right.
Something may happen to him. Life changes, and
Right.
he may retire,
Right.
walk away.
Right.
As I said in the finance committee, it shouldn't be unforeseen to think that someone might resign this year.
Right.
That someone might be the
Right.
police chief.
Right, and yeah, I mean, they were emphasizing the fact that we've got to fund a position, and we've got to fund a position that everybody agrees is a position the way it is understood. And I guess this kind of underscores the need to have a job description, and
Right.
I mean, they talked about contracts and things like that, which is probably wise to do. I think the town needs to mature into that, probably get into that level of I don't know, accountability.
Right, but there was a different member of finance did say something that again tweaked my memory that she remembers the select board talking a lot about offer letters.
Right.
And offer letters was something that we should have done. I was when that came up. Yeah, I agreed. We should absolutely do offer
Right.
letters.
Who did we hire?
Well, Rod.
No, not we. I'm not part of that we.
Okay, yeah.
You see, but when I was on, I mean, I guess it was treasurer. We had Sharon.
There was Sharon and Dion.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, that's legit. Yeah, we should have had that. Maybe we should have gotten in a little bit more into that back then.
yeah. But we also had. I won't say that.
Yeah, just let it go.
Yeah. So it should have been done.
Right.
And it should, especially after it was in a public meeting, should have been executed.
Right.
And they hired this police chief, and as far as anyone knew, there wasn't an offer letter ever presented.
No.
So
I don't think anything was even. I don't remember it even being discussed from a money standpoint.
No, not from a money standpoint.
It was just like
You're hired.
you're hired, which I know there was a search committee and all that, but there was no discussion. And I don't know if they had.
Yeah,
I mean,
no discussion in an open meeting with the select board.
Right, which should have been done because this is an open. It wasn't.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess you could say. I don't know if there were negotiations
the negotiations would have been for his salary.
and that would have been an open.
I think
Can you negotiate?
I don't.
I mean, you should have parameters.
The executive session is very specific on what you can and can't do. I think you can negotiate in executive
I
session.
thought it was collective bargaining.
Okay, maybe it is just collective bargaining.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, but the results have to be in public anyway.
Right. And
So-
I don't remember hearing any monetary value
No.
being thrown out there. But
No. So anyway,
so
Um,
what happened?
what was I talking about?
His salary, changing his salary.
So yes,
And you wrote an email
After
saying that you had
discussion.
concerns about the position versus. God.
I'm not that far.
Well, I just want to make sure.
So, so at the end of the day, they voted unanimously to put the salary line item back up to where it was, And there was some very interesting conversation. And again, you know, if you want to watch a professional board with mature conversation and, you know,
Yeah.
healthy discussion,
Right.
tune into finance.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the questions was, you know, if we raise the salary line item back up, where's the check and balance to make sure that that he doesn't just start billing up to
Right.
his max level, as you know happened with and actually that went even beyond the
Yeah.
max level with the treasurer collector.
Right.
And you know
There wasn't an answer.
there wasn't an answer.
No, I mean,
well, there was
it was
by saying that the select board
would have to.
have signed the warrants
Sign the
every
warrant.
2 weeks, and they should be looking at that
Right.
stuff.
I mean, the warrants haphazard. They're a little bit. Some, you know, you get kind of caught up in things, but there are certain things now I think that you need to be aware of, and so
And it's not even now. We were aware of them when we were on the board, and you don't just blindly sign
Right.
timesheets.
right,
You know, the select board is responsible for making sure the financial, you know, bills are paid correctly.
right,
And
right.
you know, Mr. Soto doesn't like signing these things because he doesn't feel he has enough time to review them properly.
Right.
That's a valid
Right.
reason.
Especially when you're new into it.
Yeah.
It takes a while to figure it out.
Yeah.
And they're all a little different.
Right.
You know,
Oh yeah.
that makes it very hard. So that may be something that
And by
eventually has to get fixed.
they're all different, he's talking about the timesheets even.
Right.
You know, the police timesheets are, I think, not even Xerox copies. The blue,
Yeah.
Blue paper.
Mimeograph.
Mimeograph.
Yeah, back in the day.
you know, that have just
Smell
been,
good.
Yeah. And they've been photocopied since, but
Yeah.
it's still that same form that you
Yeah.
fill out by hand, and
Right.
others have the Excel spreadsheet, others have, you know, some other form.
Right.
And
things are
everything.
stapled together and
Yeah.
you know,
There's
signed.
landscape, there's portrait, there's,
Yeah.
you know, so it is difficult.
It is, and there's really kind of no. Yeah, it's very. I think it is a little different, especially when you're just coming on and you have no idea of the names, who's what, and you say, and so you say, okay, well, that's what was signed off on. Is that accurate or not? So in theory, you know, if you had X amount of money and you divide that over 12 months, you have, you know, X over 12 that you could potentially use. Well, if you did that, or it was agreed upon that you were taking less, and then 3 people on the select board leave and 3 new people come on, and you come on and you go up and you pay, it's going to look like you deserve it. It's going to look like you're supposed to get it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like the idea. I like what FinCom did because I agree the position should be funded that way, but there needs to be a written agreement in a folder somewhere in HR
This offer letter.
that says this is what you're paid. And then if they
Yeah.
if
I guess
somebody
it should probably
were
be
to-
annual.
right, and if that gets changed, it needs to be updated and recorded or voted on by the select board and then put back in there. And if there's any question, you just bring it up and just say, there you go. You were supposed to pay yourself X. You were getting X plus Y. That's wrong.
There's
You're
an
done.
issue.
There's an issue. We got to talk.
Yeah.
And so, so I think that there should be some paperwork and a trail for this.
Yeah.
You
So
know, for sure.
another
Not just-
former select board member, Michelle Shea, writes in that she's written quite a few things. I'll say that you know, it also doesn't look like they look at the appropriation sheets. The appropriation sheets, again,
Right.
every month the accountant will hand you, I call it the burn rate,
Right.
you know, and it basically
Right.
gives you the budget for the year, how much they've spent, and what the percent is.
Right.
And you look and, you know, I wish there was an added percent of what percent of the year has passed
Yeah, you have to do some
at the
math.
top.
Right.
And I'm not good at that.
Yeah, I feel like 4 months in, you know that you should have used 1/3 of it, and then you have to see what's left. So there ought to be 66% left. If there isn't, then it's like, whoa, that's a red
You
flag.
guys are math major, man.
Well, there you go. You got to know.
Yeah.
But this is, you know, that's basic. If you look and it's December and there's only 25% left.
Yeah.
Does it show left or how much you used? Left, right?
Left.
Okay, so then that's a red flag. I mean,
Yeah. I would cheat, and you can look and see, five employees, five salary line items, and they're going to take the same amount every month. So,
right.
So you'll see that it's 33, 29. Okay, well this guy didn't do something,
Right.
but it's 33% of the year
Right.
is through. Pretty easy to just do that if you don't want to do math.
Right.
And you can see it. And then if you see one that's 66,
Mm-hmm.
well, what happened here?
Right. Right. The appropriation is really kind of your instant read. Yeah, it's your cheat sheet.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
Yep.
I think you had it right on the head. And Michelle, that's a good point. That's a very key piece of information. We used to get it
Every month.
every month. Yeah, we'd get it in our packet or we'd get an email. I can't remember. I remember usually seeing it in a packet for some reason.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it got emailed.
At the end.
Yeah.
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 But it's good. It's good to have again, just one more bit of information that makes you a better manager.
Right.
All right.
Or a manager.
Or just a manager, right? Step up to the plate. And,
Yeah. Manage.
exactly.
Yeah. So,
Was there anything
is
else?
there anything else?
I don't know. I don't think there was.
Anybody else have any comments?
So we'll look up. I don't know if anybody's looked up the 20-hour minimum. They didn't give us the answer. There's something else I was supposed to look up and I forgot since. But we have, I think we have a select board meeting next week. Is that right? We should have a select board meeting next week because we didn't have one this week.
I think they just canceled this one because it was flea market. And over half the board is, tied financially to the flea market. Oh, did I say that?
Yeah, you did. Yep. All right. Fair enough. So they're gonna probably skip this one, skip next week, and then go back to
I would think so.
yeah.
They're not ones to do extra.
There's no person. So what? How about the flea market? I haven't been down there to be honest during the busy days. So, but you're on the west side.
I'm on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
That it seemed like it's going well. It's perfect weather. I will say
Coffee house open.
no, the coffee house isn't opening
It's
until May 18th.
18th, I think. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but it's been weird. Usually on Mill Lane, there's a line of traffic, just miles long, and it hasn't been like that. But you go down there, and I don't think there's less people down there. So I don't know if people are starting to get a flow,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's just I don't know what it is.
But I guess that's a good thing.
The parking lots are primed and ready to take whatever they can.
Yeah, good. All right.
Yeah. Well, Sheila says she has not been able to find the definition for full versus part-time municipal employees.
All right. Well, I'll keep looking at that. I know it's got to be written somewhere in the.
Yeah.
It's got to be written somewhere. I think it's got to be municipality law, which may not be as easy to find as MGL.
Right.
I mean, it's probably in a subset somewhere.
But I will say with the flea market, and this has been one of my pet peeves as a select board member and just a concerned resident. In the past 2 years, really, the police presence is just not appropriate.
Right.
It's scary down there. I went down both days. First day I didn't see a single police officer.
Nobody on bikes or whatever.
No.
They used to be at all the intersections and
Oh
just
yeah,
going up and down.
there were 8 to 15, cops back when I started on the select board. Today I did see 3.
Okay.
So that was good. So I just and the other side of that story is always we've never needed them before,
Right.
and that's a valid point, but it's also something that's kind of a false flag because you don't get police officers
Right.
on past, needs.
Right.
You do it on potential future,
Right.
Requirements.
Right. Absolutely.
And the world has not gotten to be a calmer place.
No, it's not. No, I agree. I think when you look at, and we had the discussion of, what's an appropriate presence. And the reality is, it's all over the place. But we're not even near it. We weren't even near it.
Oh yeah.
Over the last few years.
Yeah.
But what's appropriate? You know what I mean? And that's the hard part.
Right. And it's tough to find. I do think that Brimfield is very unique.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at the Big E. You can look at a Patriots game or a Bruins or baseball, but those are going to be rowdier crowds.
Right.
These are people who want to see antiques.
Yeah. Right.
And it's not going to be that same base.
Right.
So and there aren't very many,
incidents.
Extremely large,
okay.
Large antique shows that cover a mile of state highway.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one in Canton, Texas, and I don't know much about it, but I know it was really long. But I don't know if it's off the beaten path or if like in a huge field somewhere. Do you know anything about it?
I don't.
But yeah, I do think that the highway throws a wrench into it. It throws an interesting discussion in it, and because if you need to get from one end to the other, you can't. I mean, not that easily. And if there were an incident, I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know that absolute cutting back on security is not necessarily a good thing for anything but the budget. And I will say that the budget will look as if it will. I mean, the income from permits from the flea market are not going to be overly spent on security because there is very little security. And so what that means is that there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion about how much money the flea market has brought in, relatively speaking, for this show. And it's going to be because they're not paying for the security out of that, out of that fund.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm not sure if it's an absolute increase or if it's a relative redistribution of, and maybe it's cutting where we shouldn't. I would be very curious to see how, I don't even know if we got a professional to come in and say, what do you really need? When it's a state highway, when does the state come in and say, whoa, there's something amok here, we got to do something about it. And I don't know what the rule is.
Yeah. So I just simply, because Sheila had a comment about the police will have those formulas. I just searched how many cops are required for 1,000 people. And this ICMA, the International, I forget what CMA stands for. It's public safety. Mm-hmm. According to the article, the ratio of full-time officers per 1,000 residents ranges from 2.6 per 1,000 to 1.8 per 1,000, with an average ratio of 2.5 full-time officers per 1,000 residents. So, I mean, they're saying we'll say two.
Go ahead.
And this is for municipal, this isn't for any special event.
Exactly.
Anybody running around with, pockets full of cash and expensive antiques and, all that.
Right.
But, I mean, I think because of the clientele that we have that, I don't think this would be too far off.
Right. Yeah, that's community policing. So in a town of 1,000, you should have,
I
two.
Suppose.
You know what I mean? In a somewhere like that, 2.5 police officers in theory per 1,000 residents. So
right, but they're even
on
saying full-time officers. So
Right.
that may not even be.
So so that's 80, right, you figure 80, so 100 hours. 100
Yeah.
hours of policing, I'm assuming a
So,
week.
again,
Or-
it's
so
kind of strange.
it's semantics a little bit. It's an interesting thing, but when you get into event
Yeah.
policing or event security, it's different. It's way different.
Right.
And the ratios are. I remember seeing them.
Oh, yeah.
200, yeah, it's like 250 people, and we could always look that up and argue one way or the other. When you've got 5,000 people, 8,000 people, 20,000 people on a big show day, that's a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot of people to control should something happen. And
Oh yeah. And it's a long way from one end to the other.
and
And that's always the scariest part for me as I'm sitting doing work. Here in Brimfield, we're lucky that we don't hear a lot of sirens,
right,
and so I tend to perk up when I hear them.
yeah,
And usually they can go by, and they're done in 30 seconds. But
right,
today I must have heard, probably 3 or 4 sets of sirens through the day,
trying to get through.
which isn't a lot. I mean,
Nope.
3 to 4 through the day is probably, hopefully, a good day.
Right,
But it takes 3-4 minutes, even with
a siren. with the
sirens,
lights.
lights
Yeah.
that I can hear from my house.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah. I remember missing ball games when I forgot to go down Holland Road or whatever, and you just Holland Road.
don't get me going on prom pictures down at Sturbridge Common.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm going, I am stuck, and I'm like, the game is going on, it's a Little League game, and like, trying to get to Mill Lane, I'm just like, just trying. But, I don't know, it is what it is.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so I think that's it. We'll do a little bit more homework, and we'll see. So I was trying to get a little gathering of topics to talk about next week. I'm sure we'll have some.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody has particular topics that they want to go over, we could certainly discuss things in a little bit more detail. But otherwise, we should have a quiet week. We got Brimfield this weekend. We've got no meeting.
Right.
So there'll be no fodder unless there is some.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And
We'll see
hopefully
what
the
happens.
powers that be are all tied up with
Keep
the
busy.
antique show,
Right.
so they won't do anything drastic this week.
All right. Excellent. Well.
With that,
Yep. With that,
Have a great night.
Yep. Have a great night. We will see everybody, and I'll
Dismiss children.
do that. And we'll do that. All right. We're gonna bust out some music, and we'll see you later.
good night.
Good night now.